Here are 10 stats you need to know for Week 10. The first stat is 16.7. That was CeeDee Lamb's points per game in the games Cooper Rush started and finished way back in 2022. Now that you say, okay, that's not bad, 16.7 points per game, you're right, that's not bad. But this is CeeDee Lamb we're talking about. We didn't draft CeeDee Lamb for 16 fantasy points. Also, when you look at it this week, this is not a great spot for CeeDee Lamb. He's averaging 3.48 yards per route run versus man coverage this year, which is one of the best rates. But he's only averaging 1.89 yards per route run versus zone, which is one of the lowest rates. And the Eagles defense plays zone almost 70% of the time. Not to mention, they're probably going to get a good pass rush against Cooper Rush. This Dallas offense, not the same like it was back in 2022. I still think CeeDee Lamb is startable this week. I don't think you have to outright bench CeeDee Lamb, but I'm looking at CeeDee Lamb as more of a wide receiver 2 in Week 10. The next stat you need to know is 173. That is the average rush yards per game the Giants have given up over the last 3 games. Now, granted, one of those games was the Saquon revenge week, but they did give up 114 rushing yards to Najee Harris a couple weeks ago and over 100 combined rushing yards to Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, and Chris Rodriguez Jr. last week. Now Chuba Hubbard coming into town, coming off a very nice game against the Saints. He's had a nice season, to be honest, and he just got paid by the Panthers, so we don't have to worry about Jonathan Brooks eating into his workload. This is going to be all Chuba Hubbard. I don't know if he has the most upside this week. He certainly doesn't have the upside he had last week in that matchup, but this is still a good matchup for Chuba Hubbard. I think you can fire him up as a low-end RB2 once again this week. The next stat you need to know is 46.5. That was how many PPR points Jennings scored in the only game that he has played over 80% of the snaps this year. Looks like he's good to go this week. You got to think he's going to play over 80% of the snaps once again this week, and he gets a great matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not only have they been terrible against wide receivers, they're allowing the 8th most points to wide receivers out of the slot. Jennings this year has ran a route from the slot 56% of the time. He's also averaging 3.73 yards per route run against zone coverage this year, which is 3rd best among all wide receivers. And the Bucs play the most zone of any defense in the NFL this year. 84% of the time they are in zone. Jennings' usage and this matchup checks a lot of boxes for a high upside flex wide receiver 3 type this week. I think he's one of those flex options that you almost have to start if you got him. The next stat you need to know is 93.3. That is Khalil Shakir's catch rate this year. Last year he had an 86.2% catch rate, which was the highest among any wide receiver since 1992. Now he's on pace to break it. And he's in a great spot this week facing a Colts defense that allows the 5th most points to slot wide receivers, and he runs a route 75% of the time out of the slot. Also, his 3.09 yards per route run versus zone is top 10 among wide receivers, and the Colts play zone at the 2nd highest rate, second only to the Buccaneers. Not to mention, he also has a very strong 2.78 yards per route run against cover 3, and the Colts run the highest cover 3 in the entire NFL. They are in cover 3 almost half of the time. Keon Coleman is dealing with a wrist injury. Amari Cooper dealt with a wrist injury last week. They are going to need Khalil Shakir this week. I think he is another very high upside flex, one of your strongest flex starts in Week 10. Hey, if you're enjoying the video, getting value out of it, let me just ask you, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We would greatly appreciate it. The next stat you need to know is 4. That is the total amount of rushing touchdowns the Texans have allowed this year on defense. If you take out David Montgomery's touchdowns this year, he's only averaging 10.5 PPR points per game. The Texans are also holding running backs to just 4.1 yards per carry and just 82 rushing yards per game, despite the fact they have had to play Jonathan Taylor twice, Aaron Jones, James Cook, Josh Jacobs, and Breece Hall. It's not like they've had an easy schedule against running backs here. They've played some of the top running backs. This is a very underrated, very good run defense. Now, I'm not saying you have to absolutely sit David Montgomery. I still think he's a solid start this week. I just think he's more of a floor play than a ceiling play in Week 10 against this strong Texans run defense. The next stat you need to know is 21.4. That is DeAndre Swift's touches per game since Week 4, which is 5th most among all running backs. And now he gets a Patriots run defense that is allowing the 2nd most rushing yards per game and over a touchdown per game to running backs. Not to mention, you don't have to worry about game script here because it's the Patriots. They're not going to blow the Bears out. This is probably going to be a very close, albeit low-scoring game, so game script will be in DeAndre Swift's favor. This guy had been tearing it up the previous 4 weeks, had a bit of a down week last week, but I think he bounces back big time in this matchup against the Patriots. Roll him out as an upside RB2 in Week 10. Now, the easiest stat of the week is going to be CJ Stroud going higher than half a yard on Underdog. That is his pick'em if you sign up for the first time on Underdog using promo code ENDGAME. And not only will you get that CJ Stroud free pick, you'll also get up to $1,000 in bonus cash that you can use right away. Just make sure you join using promo code ENDGAME to take advantage of those offers. The next stat you need to know is 27.8. That was Tank Bigsby's snap percentage in the first half last week with Travis Etienne back and healthy. Now, his snaps did go way up in the second half, but I think Travis Etienne got benched for dropping an easy pass that led to an interception. Gotta think Travis Etienne is going to be the preferred back here when he's healthy, and he is healthy. And this is not a great matchup for the Jaguars running backs. This is a top 5 Vikings run defense that just shut down Jonathan Taylor. Not to mention, it sounds like we're going to see Mac Jones at quarterback, which is just a big hit for the entire offense here. Tank Bigsby has been good this year, but I think this week with the matchup and with the situation with Etienne back and the quarterback situation, you're better off leaving Tank Bigsby on your bench this week if at all possible. The next stat you need to know is 20.7. That is Jonnu Smith's target share over the last 4 games, which is 9th among all tight ends. And even in the last 2 games with Tua back, it's only dropped to 18%, which is still 12th best among all tight ends. And this week he gets a Rams defense giving up the 3rd most points to tight ends. They also play zone 74% of the time and cover 3 41% of the time. Those are the 2 coverages that he has had the most success against this year. When you combine his target share and his usage with this matchup, I think Jonnu Smith is a great deep league streaming option at tight end. And honestly, I don't even think he's a bad streaming option in shallower leagues as well if you're that desperate at tight end. The next stat you need to know is 4. That is the number of games where Sam LaPorta has had a target share under 10%. Last year, that only happened 1 time over the course of the entire season. And after his breakout week 8, where he caught a touchdown from David Montgomery, not even his own quarterback, he crashed back down to earth last week in week 9, only had a 13% target share. And now the only hope people really had for him this year was Jameson Williams being suspended, but oh look, he's back into action this week. And if all that isn't enough to sway you off Sam LaPorta this week, he's facing a Texans defense allowing the 3rd fewest points to tight ends. At what point do we just give up on Sam LaPorta this year? It's week 10. You got to get a guy who can actually get you some fantasy points. I would rather play Jonnu Smith than Sam LaPorta in week 10, to be honest with you. And then the last stat you need to know is also 4. That is the Jets' pass rate over expectation this year on offense. Another stat you need to know is 6. That is the opponent's pass rate over expectation when they play against the Arizona Cardinals. The Jets also love to throw in the red zone for some reason, as Aaron Rodgers has the 5th most red zone targets of any quarterback this year. Not to mention, the Jets defense has been a little bit leaky this season, so against this Cardinals offense, this has a chance to be a sneaky shootout type of game. Now, I'm not going to say Aaron Rodgers is my favorite streaming quarterback this week, but I think if you're in a deeper leagues or guys like Brock Purdy, Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, they're not available, Aaron Rodgers is in a sneaky good spot this week to have another strong game coming off a strong performance. He's not the worst streaming option in week 10, that's for sure. And if you still need more help taking home the win in week 10, we got you covered. Check out our week 10 playlist right here with everything you need to dominate your fantasy matchup.